So, welcome to the Engineering, Emotions, and Energy podcast. I'm your host, Justin Wink. Today, we are going to be talking psychedelics and finding your purpose and getting into alignment so that you can possibly create a business that helps others transform and live their passion. And we got I consider this a really good get, Beth Weinstein, who has a new podcast called The Psychedelic Entrepreneur. And it is the podcast for integrating psychedelics, sacred plant medicine into your coaching, healing, and other transformational businesses. She's been a spiritual coach for a while now, helping current and aspiring entrepreneurs, coaches, spiritual leaders, and healers align with their purpose and grow their business so that they can help more people create consistent income, have an online business that they love and can work from anywhere. She guides people in step-by-step processes to grow their businesses in a balanced, co-creative way. And it's heart-centered, and it also combines spirituality and mindset training and manifestation work. She's spoken on multiple stages, podcasts, summits, and has been featured in the New York Post, Huffington Post, Shape Magazine, and many more places. So please welcome to the show, Beth Weinstein.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me here. So good to be on here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. I know you've been like really busy getting your podcast going, and I just listened to it, and it's just incredible. And this is one of these topics like I've been wanting to have on the show, and because it's something like I kind of recently got into, and I kind of want to have somebody who's like knows it in and out, because this topic of psychedelics, it's not something to be taken lightly, even though sometimes people think like, oh, well, that's like, party drug, party thing, whatever. Like, let's go and get, fucked up and see like some dragons floating around and feel the music and things. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about. Right.
Oh gosh. Once in a while, but very rarely.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to your podcast, and I think you refer to it as a drug. You're like, I actually don't even like to call this drugs anymore. I like to call it medicine, because yeah. And I'll share with you and my audience my experience, because I in late November I partook in ayahuasca ceremonies at a resort in Costa Rica called Rhythmia, and this was something like I actually booked about a year ago. I had heard I was already feeling like pretty down on my life, and like I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to do something. And then I heard this podcast with Vishen Lakhiani interviewing, I think it's Jack Canfield, the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, and he was like, "Oh, Rhythmia is my place, and here's why." And I was like, "Okay, I'll book that." It was one of those, like, I've tried so many personal development coaches and therapy and all sorts of other things. I'm like, maybe this is it. Maybe I need Pachamama through the ayahuasca to give me some clarity. And it was interesting, like even before I went down there, some stuff started to unfold where I have an engineering background. And so I like to have my spreadsheets. And I had a spreadsheet that said in July of 2021, I would be able to take some time off from my job and constantly figure out what I want to do.
Oh my God.
But I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I went on leave from my tech job in mid-November, right before I went down to Costa Rica, which was, great to kind of like really be able to take that space and not have to like worry about going right back to work. And like at the plant medicine is like no joke, even in like this resort environment where they have doctors on staff and a lot of people to watch and take care. Like it's truly is an inward journey. And my first night, like I saw some scary stuff of like how I could die and all these other things. And then the other few nights I started to get like, some messages like that weren't like, my usual thoughts of intellectual. And I don't know, sort of like looking back over the past 5 months, I feel like it was more of a, learning what I need to get out of my life. And so I don't know if I quite yet have that clarity of what do I want to do with my life, but I feel like I've been clearing out and I've made space, and now it's kind of like getting ready. And I'm just kind of curious, like, I guess I'll just ask, probably I know as I say it, I'm going to be like, well, this is dumb, but I'm sure it's a question like everyone has either before, during, or maybe they always have. Is like, is that a weird experience? Am I slow, or, is this kind of a typical part of the process, it is a process.
You mean the experience that you didn't get all your answers in 4 nights? And
yeah, because it's like often you're reading the book and it's the person telling the story or whatever is like, oh, and then I saw God and God said you should start this up. And
if it was that easy, we would drink ayahuasca once and never again. Yeah, no, this is very normal. I actually did a podcast interview earlier today and the same thing came up. I said, look, if there was a magic pill, everybody would know about it by now and everybody would have done it. And if it was just a one-time thing, then hey, like, imagine what our world would actually be like. But and no, it's very common, and really, this is the bigger conversation is that it really comes down to the day to day. What happens with the medicine work, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin or other peak experiences, there's many, many others. And, even with the big ones and certain ones like Iboga supposedly tell you what to go do with your life. But the reality is you still have to integrate it. You still have to do the day to day. There's the real world that we live in, meaning like your stuff is still there and paying the bills and showing up to, your day to day. So it is normal to kind of let it unfold and let it emerge. And for me and most people that I know and who I work with and even within communities that I've been a part of, it's a process to allow the unfolding and to allow the emergence. But I do think you're approaching it the right way. The more curious you get and open up that space, like I do believe that the medicine, very rarely has it told me like straight up, here's what to go do. There have been things that it's told me to do, and I actually just kind of ignored them because very often there's also a lot of messages that come through where some people can't actually determine if those messages are true higher self or if they are from your own monkey mind. Sometimes it's actually very hard to tell, which is really like the truth versus your actual mind. And so, just getting curious about what comes through and kind of contemplating it. And then I like that idea of creating space and, because in reality, this is a lot of the theories is in order to really come into our, best selves, our most authentic selves, our highest, truest zone of genius, it is about clearing all the stuff that's in our way internally, emotionally, spiritually, even physically. So it's all intertwined. So it's not necessarily like, what shall I go do or what do I need to start adding? It's about actually releasing what is no longer serving you. And sometimes
which is huge. Yeah. Cause a lot of people are like, how come I don't have Mr. or Miss Right? Or why don't I have a good, and it's like, well, is there any space for that in your life? Like, are you all booked? Yeah. Like, emotional baggage is the same way. It's like, well, yeah, if you keep holding on to your trauma and your, I don't know, bad thoughts, like how are you going to have like these blissful, happy thoughts and manifest good stuff? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned a few different types of plant medicine already, Iboga, which in some of my research, like that is like that's some serious stuff, like can really heal people, but I've heard it, it's intense. And then we already talked about ayahuasca, and then there's psilocybin, which is common with shrooms. Is there, from your experience, because probably most people just like stumble across, like, because that's just what was offered or whatever. But is there a little bit of, depending on what your outcome is, maybe what medicine you might want to focus on based off of, maybe where you're at and what you're trying to do?
Feeling overwhelmed by the daily grind? Imagine if you could pause, reset, and truly connect with a calmer, more fulfilled you. It's not just a dream, it's absolutely possible. Hi, I'm Justin, and I invite you to discover the life-changing techniques in my book, Engineered to Love. Right now, I'm offering a free chapter complete with guided audios that have already helped so many people find peace amidst the chaos. These aren't just any techniques. They're transformative practices designed to help you love yourself and engage deeply with the present moment without even having to close your eyes to the world around you. So join us at engineeredtolove.com/sample and access your free guided session. It's time to bust the busyness and embrace the joy, ease, and love in your everyday life. Don't wait. Start your journey to a more relaxed and recharged you today, because you deserve to live a life you love. Visit engineeredtolove.com/sample. See you there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, and this is, I think it's all very personal. For me, my greatest healer when it comes to this, the medicines and psychedelics has been ayahuasca. But psilocybin is definitely, to me, a lot easier to work with. It's not always easy. Let me get that straight. It's definitely, I've had some really hard times on it. But here's the thing, this is also something I always like to mention, is it's not just the medicine, it's literally how you're bringing it back to your day-to-day life, like what it changes are you actually making. Are you getting support? Are you integrating it properly? Are you, working with maybe a somatic therapist and studying and how to master your mind? Are you doing daily meditation? So there's all of that, which honestly is, to me, the most important over a psychedelic, because psychedelics kind of open a lot of the doors, but they don't necessarily like fix everything.
Yeah, I've heard it. It opens the door, and you can go visit it, but unless you do that work, you can't stay there.
Yeah. It's a really deep, profound process. But ayahuasca, as you have now experienced, it can really take you into some realms that are not easy to see and to sit with, which I personally believe is one of the greatest things about it, especially with what we're witnessing in the world today and the day-to-day of life in 2021 and beyond. I'm sure things are not going to ease up anytime soon. And it's, to me, really teaching us how to sit with that discomfort and be able to, see it as almost a gift. It's part of this evolution that we're in, and this, how do you transmute these potentially really rough parts of, like things surfacing, or memories or traumas that you just really haven't wanted to look at, or, I mean, I've had very, very, very profound healings with ayahuasca that I really wasn't expecting, like things that I thought weren't even mine to deal with, like something that happened to my mom, or, something that happened in my ancestry. And I'm telling you, it can go, even if people don't believe in this, there's this whole, the study of epigenetics and DNA and understanding how we are built as humans. These medicines can go deep into, past lives, and, looking into, I've gotten actual like DNA healings that I don't know how to explain, other than I know it's doing something energetically to my lineage, which is actually, the theory is that these affect, if you actually want to get really deep, like time is all now, like time, there is no such thing as time. It's all an illusion of the mind. And if you look at time as a stillness, which is like all is just once, right? Like that's, and again, this is really hard for a lot of human minds to to grasp this concept, but the idea, and this is like, there's teachers out there, this is like ancient wisdom, Buddhist teachings, like everybody talks about this. And then there's modern teachers who don't go into plant medicine who teach this every day, like the Joe Dispenzas of the world, or great meditation teachers. But essentially you can heal past, current, and future, meaning, like my nephews that are much younger than me are actually getting healed while I heal myself. And there's theories that we're actually, when you work on your own, healing of past traumas, or your own mindset and limiting beliefs and whatever else you're carrying as baggage, it's actually healing the collective, meaning like this affects everybody without us even knowing how it affects, because we're all connected. Everything is energy. Everything is down to these, quantum particles, that we're all interconnected. I mean, this is Neil deGrasse Tyson here talking. Mm-hmm. So, it's, that's where, psilocybin has done that. I've worked with, the Sonoran desert toad, bufo, the 5-MeO DMT, which that one's a whole nother animal in itself, like quite literally. But that also, it's I don't know if I can actually recommend it to everybody because it was very intense, but I do believe that it's doing something on this like quantum level that like we don't even understand to some level. And I do believe the reason why these medicines have grown so much in popularity during this time that we're in over the last, however many 30, 40 years, and exponentially growing the last few years, is because there's a lot of surfacing. There's a lot that people are now kind of at their wits end. Like, people don't want to live with anxiety anymore. People realize depression is really, it's killing them quite literally, and PTSD and trauma. And I think there's this desire to know our true nature, which is, healthy, happy, and whole. I mean, this goes back to like, this is like ancient yoga here. So
getting back to what worked for thousands of years. And I think people are waking up that they've sort of been fed a big lie of, well, you go to school, you get good grades, you get a good job, you get married, you have the kids, and then they get to thing, and then you die, and that's a good life. And it's like, is it? And because I know, I got my PhD, and then I got my first job and got promoted, and I'm like, well, where are all the happy friends? We're all, where's the great woman in my life and all these things? And it's like, I got to do the internal work. And
that's exactly what happened to me. I mean, it was actually, my father, because my father was actually a metallurgical engineer and did the same thing. It's like he went to Stanford and had this great job and had the family and the kids. But then I knew, because he actually did start a business while he was working as an engineer at one point. And I knew there was a sense of, this is what I'm supposed to do, but then what else is there in life? And then that's exactly what happened to me, especially, I was already on this path from a pretty young age. I just always questioned everything. I was like, wait, is this all there is? Like, is this it? Like, I got my first, when I started getting, like my more amazing job, making great money, living in New York City, having that life. But I was like, well, is this really all it is? Like, I'm just going to do this and then die, and I knew there had to be more. And I know more and more people every day, especially now since the pandemic, people are really questioning, like, what is this all about? Like, we're now faced with, life has been kind of turned upside down in so many ways. And sometimes it takes being shown these like crazy initiations of sorts to finally go make some changes in your life. And that's honestly, the psychedelic path. One of my old friends made a joke once, and he actually did work with psychedelics, but I was telling him how I was going back to Peru, again and again. And he's like, I don't want to go to Peru because I like what I do for a living. That's what he said to me. And I was like, look, if you like what you do, then nothing's going to change. But that was kind of the joke, is people would go have these really intense experiences, go into self-inquiry, and then come out and be like, okay, it's time to quit my job, But that's because so many people were misaligned with their work, especially more than anything, especially here in the Western world. And
I have a similar reaction when someone tells me they want to go get a PhD, because I got my PhD, and I'm usually like, oh, what happened to you? Why are you so broken? What awful thing happened? Because it's like no well-adjusted person that's really, unless it's like there's something very specific, like you had a kid that died of a disease and you want to go find the cure. Like there's kids, but otherwise it's like you have a deep need for external validation that you're willing to put up with some asshole professor to own you basically for 6 to 10 years of your life. That's how badly you want the external validation. It's like, that doesn't come from a happy spot.
It's so interesting, because my father had, he actually had 2 masters, because supposedly, I don't even know the whole story, but he was supposed to get his PhD. And then I think, he ended up having the family and all this stuff went down, but he never ended up getting it. And supposedly it was because he realized that it was just for that. Like, he didn't actually need it. He already had, the job that he ended up having for most of his career. But it was a funny story, because it all came down to that. Like, he just wanted it for the title, right? Like, doctor.
Yeah. And then the thing is that especially nowadays, unless you're like a medical doctor,
Yeah.
people give you crap. So it's like you don't even get to call yourself doctor most of the time. Like, what was it? People gave Jill Biden shit
Yeah.
that she wanted to be called doctor or whatever. And it's like, well, technically, like that used to like, I don't know. And maybe that's one of the things where we gone so wrong with Western medicine is that we almost deify the medical doctors and almost everyone else is, so less than in comparison. Like maybe if we went back to, well, there's lots of people that know lots of things and we should call them all doctor or have a reverence for people that decide to know about something, but not make one better or worse than the other. So you did mention that one of the medicines you're like, I don't know if I could recommend. I was just curious, like in general, like do you is any of the plant medicines, are they kind of for all people at all times, or there's like some caveats where you'd be like, hey, slow your roll, here's some things you want to like consider before you head down this path? And yeah.
Actually we were talking about that on the podcast interview earlier today, where I interviewed another pretty big psychedelic leader, and she was like, look, this is not for everyone. And I actually highly agree. Even me, there was a point in my life where, looking back, I probably shouldn't have been doing them, for that one moment when I was going through a lot, but it is what it is. And that was my path. And even, my partner, who's this somatic therapist, has written about this. And there are certain people where psychedelics can actually be more fragmenting and actually take you maybe down into a worse path. And that's why it's really important to get the proper support, meaning like I technically, I prefer psychedelic integration coaches or somatic therapists, or kind of, a combination. There's a lot of, people who've studied somatics who've also, work with psychedelics, but getting some kind of support to help you deal with some of these really big peak experiences, because they can be actually very jarring. Like, for example, the 5-MeO DMT, which, I'm glad I did it. I will probably not do it again, definitely not anytime soon. I did this 4 years ago, and it took me a long time to kind of come back from it. I was going through a lot during that time period. It was a pretty intense year for me. And then you throw that in, and I didn't realize how much it kind of would knock me off, and
that wasn't your first rodeo, right? Like,
no, not at all. No, but and here's the thing, it's all kind of, then I also take the approach of, the perspective that, well, it was also divine timing. It was definitely hard. It was like, 6, 7, 8 months, maybe even more, of like very disorienting and kind of, really intense time period. But when I came out of it, it was really great. But that whole path for about like almost a whole year was really, I call it my like dark year. It was a very like dark night of the soul year. And there was a lot that surfaced, but I had also thankfully been, I've always had a pretty good daily practice of meditation. I went and did a Vipassana that year. I had support, I had therapists and integration help. So, but yeah, I do think there's people, and this is kind of one of the issues right now with the mainstream media and the world that we're in, where I call it the Amazon Prime effect, right? Like everybody just wants everything delivered now. Like, oh, I heard that psychedelics will cure my anxiety. Let me just go do them all and like see what happens. And and here's the thing, it does help these things, but it can actually, it's almost like, very often it can make you worse before you get better. Or it might, re-traumatize you if there's certain traumas that you haven't been able to process, or you haven't gotten help to process, like maybe things that have been repressed, or things that you didn't think were even, an issue anymore. They might resurface. So I always say, look, be prepared to get some help. I don't do these like blindly. And I also, I always recommend like do the research, talk to people, make sure you're led to work with, a facilitator or someone who you feel really safe and comfortable with, who really knows what they're doing. Because that's energetically, there's also, we can go into those realms where there's a lot to be said for the energy of who's there with you and who's holding that space. And even down to like, where's the medicine from? Who made it? What, like, how did it get here? What tracked and what lineage, and was it sustainable? I mean, I could go on. And all of this, even mushrooms, it's like, even the person who's growing your mushrooms can have an influence on how the mushrooms react. So there's a lot of nuances. And I do, as much as I love these medicines and they're a huge part of my life and they've really helped me on my path, and I work with a lot of medicine people, there is always the truth, like everything. It's like, there's no magic pill, other than the only thing I swear by as a magic pill is a daily meditation practice. To me, I'm like, I don't know how anybody's living on this planet without meditation. But that's,
Yeah, I think that's because without putting the mind in a proper context, it just starts running everything, and it's a logical mind is stupid. It really is, like, because there's no beginning, there's no end, but it thinks there is, and tries to run us towards something that really there's no point to. Like, yeah, it's a good servant, but a horrible boss. Yeah, because like. One thing I think is that, like you said, there's all the external, but then there's all the internal stuff. Because basically, you bring all of you into the experience, which the bad. Most people are like, "Oh, I got all this bad stuff. I'll just get all that out of me." And it's like but you also bring all of your good traits with you. And so, like you said, like if you have that daily meditation practice, if you've had like some training on how to deal with like trauma and things like that, like that can help you in the experiences. Cause I know for me, like one of my nights, like I was just like, I kept getting like all these vignettes of like either bad things I had done or wrongs that had been done to me. And it was just like, I was like, oh, okay, it's forgiveness time. Like, okay, let me forgive these people. Let me forgive myself. And, whereas I'm sure if I hadn't, had practice in forgiving, like things like that, it probably would have been a night of hell for me. But instead it was like, it ended up being like a very peaceful and like healing night. And I'm just like, oh, I'm glad that I could just go like, oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Oh, I understand. And then like, it just float away. And then the next, then there's dad. And it's like, oh, thanks, dad. Like, oh, I understand. I'm so sorry. It's okay. I forgive you. And then boom, goes, but there were other people at night that was just like, the demon of my father was there and kept coming at me, and I kept trying to fight him. And it's like, well, it's
oh yeah, those are the nights where, and I know because I've been brought there myself. In 2017, I was down in Peru, and I actually announced I on the second night I was like, okay, I don't think I should ever do this again, because it brought, and I look at now looking back, that was one of my greatest teachers. It was like my mind brought me to the place of like utter suffering, like to the place where I was like, well, wait a second. And I finally realized, I'm like, oh, this is what liberation is all about, is liberating oneself from the mind. Because, you can have a tormenting journey where it's like you're pounding yourself, or, people, and we've talked about this, actually just interviewed someone else a few weeks ago. And we've joked about this before, about the mushrooms were mean. And I'm like, no, like it's not the mushrooms that are mean. It's something within you that hasn't been able to forgive or hasn't found that self-love and self-compassion. And very often it's this ego part of our minds that can come through and pound you and pound you and pound you and pound you. And then someone says, I hate ayahuasca because that was just awful. I've had a friend sit next to me during a ceremony who was suffering the entire time, and he has never drank it ever again. Like he just was like, I can't, but he has not done a lot of these daily practices and not gone into those deep, dark places while sober to learn how to process them with love and compassion. Like you just mentioned, like a forgiveness practice or a self-love practice, or, the real deep inner healing work, which is, it's all part of it. So sometimes, there's a part of me that's like, I don't know, maybe everybody jumping into psychedelics needs to have these kind of crazy, dark, bad experiences to then, have them see what it really is that's causing that. I don't know. That's for me, it was a teacher, but it was really damn hard, like scary at times, definitely.
Yeah, very scary because I'm almost in the space. I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily want to ever do it again. I think I probably will at some point, but
Yeah.
I'm not like, oh man, I can't wait to get back there because it's
Yeah.
like, where will it go? And from what I've heard, like you never really know what's going to come up because it's whatever you ultimately need.
Yeah.
And one of the experiences I found is I don't know. It's like I've always heard of the concept of duality that like there is no hot versus cold. It's all on a spectrum. So there is no light, there is no dark. Like light is just only in contrast to dark. So dark is just a quality of light. And hate is just a quality of love. And it's like when I was like I'd known it intellectually, but it was like in the experience, like for whatever, like I felt it at like a core level, kind of a thing. And that's kind of where like yeah, so it's like when having those like really horrendous experiences, it's sort of like when you can see like, oh well, it's just the flip side of this other thing, and I can choose the other thing because it's connected.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, where it's because that's kind of like where forgiveness comes from. Is like, something awful was done, but it's still connected to like an ultimate goodness, and just like
Yeah.
I'm gonna slide on that continuity because it's like they
Mm-hmm.
aren't separate. It's like that person doing a hateful act isn't actually separate from an act of love. It's like
Mm.
it's like a spectrum, and you can choose to slide on over. Not saying it's easy to slide on
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
um, but what's the alternative? Just like carrying around that hate and pain or whatever, or
Yeah.
fear, and
Which only makes you suffer, and
yeah,
those around you. And there's no point to it, I think. But, a lot of people love living in their suffering, I guess.
yeah. Well, it's comfortable, like
Yeah. It's known.
like the old pair of shoes. So is there anything that you'd like? I don't know, someone who's just like just thinking like, oh man, I hadn't even thought of like there's something not working with my life. Maybe this is something for me to look into. What would you recommend as like kind of like maybe their first step into exploring psychedelics as an option, like from because I know you've worked with like tons of people, and so what would be like? Okay, all right, baby bird, let me feed you.
Yeah.
Here's the first thing you can get started because it like there's a lot of information out there, and
Yeah.
not all of it's good.
Oh yeah. No, it's not. So the one thing I always say to people is, start with your own intention, especially if you're very new to psychedelics, like, because I hear this all the time. People are like, hey, where can I go do this? I want to go just do it. I keep hearing about it. It's like, well, you have to start from this deep inner place of like, what is your intention for doing it? Like, what do you really want? And just start getting curious, put the intention out there to the universe, and let it unfold. I do believe that approach of curiosity and wonder and kind of having that daily prayer, prayer intention, whatever you want to call it, where it's like, okay, you want to find some purpose in life and you've tried all these things and maybe you think this is a path, put it out there, go out in nature and go speak to the earth and put it out there. So that's one of the first things, is setting the intention. It always really starts from that very beginning place, and not just when you're going into an ayahuasca ceremony or when you're about to take the mushrooms. And it, as Justin said, it starts earlier, like there's always movement, like way before you even get brought to the actual medicine experience. A lot of times this medicine can start working in you, months, years in advance. Like you don't even know.
Well, kind of goes back to what you said earlier that there is no time. There's just now, and what happened now impacts the past and the future.
Exactly.
It's trippy, right, everybody? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then, and this is maybe too deep for some people, but these plants, and not just psychoactive plants, but all beings, all plants, all everything. I mean, I believe everything. Like there is a spirit, right? They're alive. They have, I mean, and other people would say this, a lot of these plants that are coming out to help us in these ways, they have their own agenda. There's a reason why psychedelics have grown exponentially around the world. And I do believe part of it is human involvement, and part of it is actually the plants with their own, intelligence of like speaking to us, speaking through us with a message of sorts. And because, there are certain messages that come through these plants that tend to be, like truths, universals. And I do believe that's something that we can't even explain. It's like the earth talking to us, the plants talking to us. I have my theories, but so the more you can actually just start this conversation, it will come to you. So that's the first thing about just getting curious and putting the intention. But then, I would say like start working on doing the work now. Like I always say, look, the best thing you can do to prep for any psychedelic journey is have a daily practice. Like if you don't already meditate, take up meditation. If you don't already work with some kind of a coach or a therapist, I prefer people that understand somatics, because it's been such a missing piece of the conversation. And it's been one of the most healing modalities I've ever done, beyond psychedelics. So, start working with someone to start exploring, these issues you want to solve. And then, take care of your body, take care of your health. It's all intertwined, and it's like, take the little steps to start on it. And then when you step into the experience, I would have a plan set up in place, like have someone you can talk to afterwards. So I've been working with psychedelics since I was quite young, since I was a teenager. But when I first went to do ayahuasca, I didn't really know anybody. I had one friend who had done it, and he was not the right person to talk to about it. And thankfully, I actually had this interconnection person who I like kind of knew, it's a long story, but like I only knew him through social media. We were like friends of friends of friends. Thankfully, I had him to talk to. But I remember coming out of that first experience being like, it was like life changing, to the point where I was like, okay, now what do I do? And those things can happen. Like I have seen people have such profound experiences that they get a little discombobulated. And, this even happens with like things like going to Burning Man or going on a meditation retreat. So you have to have that space for integration and support and understanding, not to make any sudden changes. Don't quit your job the next day. Don't walk away from your relationship because, of one thing that came up. Like ease back into life,
Yeah. Because things are going to probably likely be churned up in your life, even with that stability. So don't add more instability into like that change,
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be that hard.
No, it doesn't have to be hard, ease into it. And then, very often I always say like, hey, and sometimes if you don't make the changes, especially if you start on this path, the universe will probably start making the changes for you somehow. I do believe the more your heart opens, which these medicines do, they really open up your heart and tap you into this awareness of your higher self that is, to me, divinely led by something beyond, whatever we want to call it, that is beyond you and what you know as you. So now all of a sudden you're opening up, and there's more space, there's awareness, there's a different, curiosity, there's a heart opening. And whether you like it or not, very often things start to unfold, and I've seen this with me, I've seen it with the clients. Yeah.
I've seen it in my life. Like, like the right hypnotherapist came along and started working with her, and it's just been, incredible. And then I got invited to start teaching meditation at a new yoga studio a few months ago. Like just somebody out of the blue was like, hey, you want to come? And so now I have like this community of people. It's like supportive and kind of like pushing me in other directions. And it's like, oh, all these things are like kind of coming together from, it's like, I had no idea back in November that it would lead here, but now that I'm here, it's like, well, of course, this is exactly how it would work out. And I know more stuff's going to work out.
There you go. Yeah. And that's the best thing you can do then, is learn how to surrender to what's gonna manifest and unfold. And I do believe it's part of the path that we're all on right now. It's I do believe that even without medicine, there's, it's kind of like COVID. What I saw is like, okay, the whole entire world is forced to stop and take a good look at life, whether you like it or not. Everybody's in the same boat. And I do believe on some level, more and more people are going to get brought to this place. Maybe it's not going to be this intense, or maybe some people won't get brought there, but more and more people are waking up. And through that tends to come, a lot of questions about like, what's misaligned in my life? What isn't working? Where do I feel miserable, unhappy? What's causing my anxiety, my sadness, my unfulfillment? And what is it that I truly want? Because the reality is we only live in this incarnation once. We're given this gift of life, and it's, especially, people in our generation, like, as I say, like younger generation, even though I'm not that young, but, we know that there's more to life out there. And so whether or not you make the changes, like if you're not willing to make the changes, like the changes will probably be made for you somehow.
Yeah. So it really is,
just start it yourself.
It is kind of up to us. Do you want to do it on your terms, sort of it's going to be easier. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. Or do you want to wait till the universe kind of like has to bang your head against the rocks like 40 million times, and you'll get there, but it's not going to be fun. And yeah, so we kind of we have the choice, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like ultimately part of it is just realizing how many choices we have, because so often it's just like, well, this is the way it is. It's like, well, is it? Like, yeah. Very few things are like the sun rising, like,
I know, exactly. Question everything. If there's one thing I have learned through, not just medicine, but like all of my path, is we were pretty much taught everything wrong, It's unfortunate. I'm like, and it almost doesn't matter, because I have clients of all ages. I have clients that are young, like my youngest client is 21. My oldest client is 71, and totally different and I'm right in the middle in my 40s, and totally different generations. And somehow everybody still all has the same beliefs. And I'm like, God, man, it's all like a complete and total reprogramming. And I have to say, ever since I've gone through all these initiations of reprogramming the narrative to a place that feels much more aligned with who I am and with, the joy in life, like life has been so easy, so much better, so much more joyful. And of course, it's not always easy. There's definitely challenges, but this, I believe, is the whole point. When you come into that path of your heart and trust in the journey, surrender, including the challenging, crazy times. And that means lots of change and transitions and things that are hard, but it always pays off. It's always for the better, and that's part of this journey. I believe, like, that's why we're all here, is to evolve and become better and better every day, and be more joyful and happy and fulfilled.
Yeah, for ourselves and for everyone else, because it's so much better to be around joyful, loving people than miserable asstards, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I try not to do that think anymore.
Yes, yeah. They can. It's a big universe. They can be elsewhere. That's what I've been trying to learn. Is that that person's fantastic, just not for in my inner circle of my life. Like they can go live their life elsewhere. If they become a different way that's compatible with how I want to live, fantastic. Till then, see you later. Yeah. So any last points? Otherwise, I'll let people know where they can find you and your podcast, or is anything. No,
I mean, I wish everybody all the best on their journey, and just know that, the one thing that keeps me going in these times is that we've all kind of asked to be born here right now during these transitional times in human history. And it's, to me, it's such a gift, so if you're not feeling happy or fulfilled, or, you feel like something's misaligned in your life, start to get curious and ask for guidance, ask for help, and see what happens. There's nothing to lose by getting curious and exploring. And, just, I always say, look, question everything. Like in the end, like come back to yourself and say, like, how does that feel to me? Like, does this feel good or does it not feel good? Okay, well, we have a choice, feel good or not good. So that's the piece of advice. And that comes back to everything, whether it's psychedelics or not. So
I love that. Yeah. And everyone, it's okay to head towards the side of it feels good. Like, what if the purpose of life is to feel good and to enjoy it? Like,
Oh,
what
so
if it's been
simple.
backwards all along, right?
I know.
Like, oh, no pain, no gain. Like, no,
I know.
pain means do something different. That's
Yes, it's so simple, but of course it's so hard for the human mind to grasp that, especially if we've been programmed this way for so long. But
yeah.
yes, just follow the path of joy. It's very, very easy and it doesn't have to be hard.
Yes. So want to let everybody know, go check out Beth's brand new podcast. I think you got 2 episodes out already, coming out every week.
Yeah. Yes, weekly.
BethWeinstein.com/podcast if you want to go and make sure you subscribe. I'm going to put all of your social media stuff in the show notes so they can find you on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Medium.
Aww.
You're on all the things. So
all the things,
because you got to be on at least 3 of the 18 things nowadays. There's so
25. I know I can't keep up.
Yeah. And if anybody has questions for me or the show, podcast@justinwink.com, and, subscribe to me. Rate this 5 stars. If you didn't like this, again, send me the email. Don't be that 1 star, whatever.
No.
And rate Beth's. Listen to it, and if you love it, give her 5 stars too. That helps her get the word out and help more people, who then go on and help more people. So it's a virtuous cycle. So that's it. And good day. Thanks, everybody.